Hello and welcome to Boise State UTP Hotspot. My name is Gabrielle Steinberg, and today we're going to be speaking about guns on campus, Senate Bill 1254. I have with me today 4 students from Boise State, who 2 of them represent the bill passing, as well as 2 do not represent the bill passing. Let's go ahead and meet our representatives.
My name is Adam Weber. I am a student here at Boise State. I'm a sophomore. I'm majoring in finance, and I am in support of Senate Bill 1254.
My name is Daniel Tellez. I am a junior here at Boise State studying political science and economics, and I am also in support of Senate Bill 1254.
And on my right-hand side, we have people who do not agree with the bill passing.
My name is Tracy Smith. I'm a graduate student here at Boise State University. I finished my undergraduate in 2011 in marketing communications, and I'm currently doing my master's in health science policy, and I am not in favor of the bill passing at Boise State University.
My name is Lauren. I am a double major in political science and communication, and I am not in favor of this bill, and I'm excited to be here to discuss such an important issue.
So I want to just kind of overall get an idea of, we can start out with you two, what your, I guess, biggest point is, and what you like about this bill so much.
Well, it's certainly a measured approach to carrying on campus. It allows only 21-year-olds that have gotten their enhanced concealed carry license and retired law officers in order to be able to carry on campus. So I think it's a measured way in order to expand those rights that have been afforded through the Second Amendment, both in our United States Constitution and our state constitution.
Right.
Yeah, I would agree with Daniel. I think that it's important that we're allowed to arm ourselves and defend ourselves. We see on the news school shootings happening and students aren't armed, and so we think this is just a safety precautionary measure. A lot of people don't know, but it's actually not illegal to carry guns on campus right now. They can't enforce a law upon you, but what they can do is they can expel you. So students are kind of at the mercy of the university, and so we think it's really important that students are able to defend themselves.
Okay, and what about you two? Do you have an overall kind of why you disagree with this bill passing?
I actually do, and if you notice in my opening statement I said I don't agree with it passing at Boise State. I realize that this is a bill that does affect our entire state and all the public institutions, but having any kind of say and having an outside voice dictate what happens on our campus and our campus community, the administration for Boise State University takes a great deal of effort and training. And as a member of the conduct board here at Boise State University, I've had to continue to do training. We just had to do continued Title IX training, for example. And so the enforcement and the legislating of a rule that would dictate how our administrators do it. And for these, many of our state legislators, and I'm sure that they meant well, but I would like to know how many of them have ever spent any time at Boise State.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Lauren?
In general, I just think that a blanket policy is a bad policy. I think that ultimately this shouldn't be a political issue, it should be a pragmatic issue. And we recognize that this bill it's basically an unfunded mandate. We recognize that there's going to be fiscal impacts on our institutions. We heard local voices stating that this isn't what we want for our institution, and ultimately I feel as though the state legislature really overlooked kind of the democratic principles of the mass amount of voices who have argued against this bill.
Right, and you said something about the fiscal impact, right. And I have Boise Democratic Representative Rubel. She says, I question the fiscal impact on Idaho's university. Who said it will cost them millions to enforce? So I want to bring that to you guys. Do you have anything about the cost that this will bring?
In regards to the added cost, yeah, so we did hear a statement from, I believe it's Mr. Yuda, who leads the campus security here. And it is a bit problematic, the $2 million, because if the rationale is to be able to prevent currently students these type of crimes or mass shootings at the universities, then what they are saying is we don't have metal detectors right now. We don't have any way to protect ourselves. We don't arm our security, our campus security, but we are safe. So the $2 million added cost is something that should have already been implemented before this, because right now, I think it's a little bit naive to assume that people wouldn't be carrying on campus. I know there are thousands of guns that go through this campus every day because there are people who don't belong to the university in any way, and they conceal carry, and they are allowed to do so legally. So they cannot expect that there aren't already guns on campus. So if their rationale is to protect us from these sort of crimes committed by guns, then I think currently, as it stands, that $2 million gap should have already been met.
Yeah, I'll let you just touch on that. I think what Daniel's trying to say is there's nothing really preventing somebody from bringing a gun on campus currently. We could all walk into a classroom and have one in our backpack and nobody would ever know. There's no searching of the bags. I don't think that's feasible for a university to do that. So I'm not sure where these costs are coming from, because we think this bill makes campus safer. So we don't think there should be any more financial impact to the university, because we believe by students carrying and defending themselves, campus already is safer. Like Dan says, it's naive to assume that students can't carry a gun on campus already.
Okay. And so, I mean, do you guys have anything to say about the fiscal impacts?
Well, first of all, one of the things, like even some of the policies and the issues and the challenges that we have as a campus community, with students maybe acting before they think all the way through.
Right.
We see so much of that in the conduct process at Boise State University. And right now, where is the additional staff? If a student, for example, was accused of some type of crime involved with this gun issue, where they felt they had the right to carry, versus maybe either the instructor or something, and they were to appeal that decision, which they have the right to do under our current code, where is the manpower going to come from for that? And then in addition, what about, how does this affect campus housing, for example? Because in campus housing and in these shared rooms, you have 2 to 4 students.
Right.
Is now the application, especially the transfer applications for Boise State students, is it going to now include a line, do you have a felony conviction on your record, for example?
Right.
Which isn't currently on our application. Because what if a student who has a felony conviction ends up getting put in housing with a student who has a concealed carry? It would be a violation of federal law to have those students room together.
Right.
How do we enforce that? I mean, the costs are staggering when you think about it.
And Lauren, about the fiscal impact, I know that you kind of brought that up.
Right. Well, so I have several answers to that. First off, on this notion that we aren't providing enough safety precautions right now, status quo, and that this is showing that we're having this big problem with safety precautions right now, I would first propose a question then why is it that these campus universities have the least amount of violence taking place, with current policies right now that are limiting access to guns? But my second response to that is, this blanket policy is difficult because when you're looking at, let's say, CWI, how are we going to enforce it when when their buildings are hooked onto, let's say, high school buildings, when they're hooked onto private buildings? How are you going to enforce this bill? And this is the same thing, when they specifically talk about the 1,000 people within an infrastructure, specifically relating to the Taco Bell arena. My question is, how are they going to enforce that, let's say, in the Student Union building when there's over 1,000 people? The pragmatics of the bill are important to look at, and ultimately we see that enforcement is going to be very difficult. And so it isn't just about, why don't we already have these metal detectors, but it's along the lines of, now we have to put these metal detectors in every single infrastructure that could potentially have more than X amount of people. You have to provide signage. I think that all of this proposes a big problem, not to mention specifically, there has been talk, specifically I believe it was in Texas, basically in an article published in the Texas Tribune, basically the Houston Community College Board of Trustees, they passed a resolution urging state legislators not to allow guns on campus because of the possibility of insurance premiums going up. These insurance premiums are from $780,000 to $900,000 within a single year. And this is going to have the most impact on us as students. Like, we're going to bear the costs of these heightened insurance premiums if they were to go into place. And so ultimately, again, I would say, why are we trying to solve a problem that isn't existent? What violence have we seen at Boise State University where we need to provide a solution that ends up significantly harming our costs?
Well, I'm sure a lot of people would toe that same line if pre-2007 in Virginia Tech or Northern Illinois University. That's the thing. You don't know. We don't argue that campuses aren't safer.
Right.
We know they are safer, but that might not correlate with gun issues because, as you've seen, we have 6 states currently that allow to carry on campus through either the court struck down certain limits allowing them to ban, or whatever method, but we have 6 and we have data from there, and there has been no single incident of a crime being committed where a gun was involved, and we do have statistics where we say we have these school shootings that have happened on gun-free zones. We're not saying that allowing guns on campus are going to stop every crime, but what we are saying is that they won't hurt. Data has shown that they won't hurt and they might help.
Right. So, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Is
yes,
that okay?
100%.
Okay, so my question is, I guess if we're recognizing that they aren't necessarily going to provide this safety measure, this benefit, right? Like, at what point, I guess, do the benefits outweigh the cost of this bill in your mind?
Well, see, that's the safety measure. It is. I'm not specifically saying that they won't provide any benefits because we don't know. We have certain different circumstances where gun crimes might play out. But what we do know is the people that the people that would be carrying are law-abiding citizens, are extensively trained, and they know how to handle these sorts of situations. Criminals aren't waiting around for these types of law to pass in order to be able to come in and commit crimes on campus or shoot up a campus.
But can I ask a question too? Oh, no, go ahead and say something.
I was just going to say, we just recognize that school shootings do happen. And yeah, they don't happen all the time.
Right.
We're not saying tomorrow something's going to happen at Boise State. We're not saying that at all. We're saying that they do happen. At Virginia Tech, for example, 32 people killed, lost their lives that day. 19 of them were above 21. They could have been carrying a weapon. They could have helped the situation. A lot of those people could have been alive today. Right. But like Daniel says, there's no evidence that shows when you allow a gun on campus that violence is going to increase. For example, in Utah and Colorado since 2003, over 100 semesters, there has been not one single gun incident, even a gun threat in
So
those.
I have a quick question. I've been speaking with students around campus as well as professors and just people. One question that is, I guess, of concern, people who do have these licenses, who can carry these guns, what are they expected to do if a situation were to occur? Are they expected to use their training? Do you guys, I'm going to give them a chance and then.
Well, that's one thing that I've done quite a bit of reading about and looking even at quite a few. There's been a number of interviews that have been done with, and you make a very valid point as far as like the Virginia Tech school is probably the best example because many of the students involved in that would have been of the legal age to be armed and carried. But unfortunately, a majority of and all of the interviews, without exception, of those people who were interviewed afterwards, when they said, if you had had a gun, what would you have done? Every one of them and every one of the interviews that I've said, are you kidding? I'd have ducked for cover. Mm-hmm. I was frozen with fright. Right. And Daniel makes a very good point about the training that's involved with people that are allowed to carry guns. But look at how many accidents are involved with guns for people that are very, very well trained in this country on an annual basis. Far more accidents occur with guns in people that are allowed to carry, They are accurately licensed. They've gone to the training, and there's a lot more deaths and basically permanent damage to people from these situations than there have been in, if you thought of every single campus that would have been allowed to have carried a gun. There's a lot more people that are involved in accidental death shootings by people who are very knowledgeable in the handling of their guns. But accidents happen. And again, you know, my thing, is it right, is it not right? It's more a case of, and I look at it from a perspective, and probably from a someone, I did my undergraduate and I'm my last semester of my master's, feel a little possessive of the campus as an almost alumni now. And I look at it from a perspective of, this is my backyard. And the administration here, we can kind of generally look as in some ways surrogate parents. And for I personally feel that in my home and my backyard, that I don't care who it is, should not come in, who doesn't come and play in my backyard on a regular basis and doesn't know what goes on. Nobody else should be able to come in and tell me what I can and can't do in my backyard and how I can and can't enforce it. And that's the challenge that I see.
I have a quote here from President Bob Krustra. It says, "I'm very uncomfortable with the thought of our campus and others in Idaho being the testing grounds in an experiment with an unpredictable outcome." So I want to ask you guys how you think this plays out, having the support of the president and the bill passing and kind of what that's going to do to us.
Well, I guess to touch on the background or the backyard thing, yeah, I agree that this is your backyard too, but at the same time, it's everyone's backyard. This is a public university. Now, if you were to say a private university wants to ban guns on their campus, fine, that's their right. But at the point where it's your backyard, my backyard, it's all of our backyards, and we all have differing opinions on it. So we're all not on the same page as that. And just touch back on the accidental. The accidental shootings, it happens about 2% of the time. You're 5 times more likely to die in a fire. You're 5 times more likely to die drowning. Yeah, so yeah, of course accidents happen. Accidents haven't happened in, like I said, Utah and Colorado. But President Krustra, I understand why he could be uncomfortable with it, because obviously that would be a very bad situation for Boise State if an incident like this did happen on campus where students were shot. But at the same time, it would be bad for President Krustra if the university was shot and these laws, or not the kids on campus were in a gunfight, and then that would just make it seem like, oh, we're not going to touch on this subject at all because it can't happen. Well, the reality is that it can happen today. Students can bring guns on campus. Do you want to touch on that?
Well, let's let her go, and then we'll come back.
Well, I guess first off on the idea of it, I feel as though this bill, the negative, people who are opposed to this bill, basically, like, we have the benefit of presumption. Like, we assume that right now status quo is good, and we have to provide, you would have to provide advantages to the bill. Like, why is it beneficial? And really what I'm hearing is, 1, Second Amendment rights, and 2, safety. And ultimately, in addressing these issues, I think that first, when looking to safety, you can look at scholarly work that has suggested that like more guns doesn't mean equal more safety. Specifically, I have a study out of the Journal of American College of Health where police chiefs were asked various questions regarding safety and gun policies, and out of the 999 chiefs that were interviewed, 86% believed that allowing students to carry concealed firearms on campus would not serve as a preventative measure for campus homicides. Similarly, in a 2009 American Journal of Public Health article, they said that a gun may falsely empower its possessor to overreact. And again, we saw this exact case coming out of the legislature in Arkansas last year, where a chancellor of the University of Arkansas at Little Rock stated, quote, "There was a recent example, not hypothetical, of a shooting at a gasoline station in West Little Rock. A person nearby with a concealed weapon decided to take out his handgun and fire it, no doubt with the intent to be helpful, but the person's bullet hit the wrong car." And so ultimately, like, I understand where you're saying, you know, these are trained professionals or these people are going to have plenty of experience with these guns, but at the same time, it's 8 hours, first off. And my second answer to that is those 8 hours, upon getting your certification, you say, I will not act as an extension to the law. And so I think that these benefits of safety, right, like at what point can we really claim these benefits of safety when, one, it's safe status quo, two, we see evidence that suggests that it's actually more harmful, and three, like we're signing into law that we aren't going to be an extension of the law.
Well, I wouldn't particularly say that a poll of I know that these are professionals, the law enforcement agents that were, but a poll them saying that it would not help does not translate directly into what actually has happened on these campuses where we have seen them put in action. This isn't a testing ground, as President Custer said. It has happened in other universities. What's that?
Do you know what kind of poll?
Oh no, I was referring to the poll that she brought up where she said 86% of people.
But the fact that our police officers...
Police chiefs,
right,
yes.
okay.
Yeah. See, we don't think that these people who do conceal carry are
acting in law.
Yeah.
They're protecting themselves.
They're protecting
we don't think
themselves,
they're going to
yeah.
be like guarding the school at night, and like we don't think that's going to happen. We think they're doing it for themselves. Personally, and like you've talked about the Virginia Tech shootings. A lot of these students would, a lot of them, yeah, you're right. They probably wouldn't have been able to react. They probably would have dropped to the floor and froze. But if I was in that situation, or somebody who's been trained with a handgun in that situation, I personally, for my own safety, would know how to react. And I think that's kind of the difference. Is we're not saying students are going to replace law enforcement. Not at all. Absolutely not. But what we're saying is students feel safer with their own ability to protect themselves.
I have a random question.
Yes.
And Adam?
Yep.
Yes. Do you have a concealed weapons permit?
I do not. I'm not 21.
I just recently turned 21, so I do plan on getting my concealed carry license.
And do you have one?
I don't.
Okay. I actually did get my concealed weapons permit, and I'm still very opposed to the law being passed. Because yes, the handling of the gun, how to do it, how to take care of it, the safety involved, all of those things, yes. But the one element, and I think that that's the piece that the legislature is overlooking in the passing of this bill, and a lot of people are overlooking in the passing of this bill, is the emotional baggage that comes with it. Last year, when this bill was first being talked about, I actually talked to a number of my professors and other people on the conduct board. And the one question that if you had a student in your classroom that you had been, maybe you developed a relationship with Daniel, and he was a student in your class, and you saw him pull a gun, as an instructor, if you had could you shoot that student? And without exception, every single professor that I talked to said, I couldn't shoot somebody that I developed a relationship with. I might, as an auto response.
And a professor here said, if a student reaches into his backpack because he's a little upset, do I assume that he has a gun, and do I assume that everything's okay? What do you guys think about? I know that's a...
I read the article, and I thought it was a bit condescending in regards to students. I think the administration itself is guilty of a little bit of condescension towards students who thinking that they are not intelligent people. We're 21 years old. We're not 40 and have life experiences. But we do know these people, statistically, these people that do get their concealed carry licenses are very knowledgeable about guns. They either get concealed carry license because they know of the need because they have previously been assaulted or something like that, or because they grew up in a gun culture where they know how to safety handle guns.
Weapons. They know
So I think some of the ignorance that some people have towards guns can play into the fact that, and I'm not accusing any of you to, as you said, you have a concealed carry license, but some of the ignorances of people that aren't around gun culture, that are not familiar with guns, that has no say. That's not an indictment of people who do know what they're doing exactly. So I think, getting back to a professor who did say, I think it was a little bit more nuanced what the article that he said than it really should be. Right. You couldn't, unless you felt threatened where he took out the gun and and pointed it at you, you would be legally allowed to shoot back. But someone reaching into their gun, I think that's just you being a little bit more paranoid.
But I think that was his point, though, right? Is to show that by allowing access to guns, it puts people on edge. And so when I'm dealing with like conduct, let's say I'm an RA, or if I'm dealing with, even though the bill doesn't necessarily extend to residence halls, but like, or I'm an advisor, right? So what do I do if there is increased access to guns, I'm on edge, if I feel like I'm in a threatening environment and I feel as though someone's going to pull their gun out of a backpack, like the professor was saying, then like where do we draw the line? And I think that that's really, this idea of a threatening environment by increasing access to concealed weapons.
I'm so sorry. I want to leave you guys, we have just a little bit of time left. Do you have one last point you'd like to bring up? Do you want to keep talking about this? Do you have,
well, I was just going to make, actually I forgot the point, so never mind.
I can speak to that point. I think the professor who wrote the article, what's to stop a student from doing that now? If a student was really that aggravated to shoot a professor, which is asinine, I don't think anybody at Boise State would do that. And what's stopping them from doing that right now currently with say the bill didn't pass? What's to stop him from doing that right now? He could easily bring a gun into his backpack, into that classroom to talk to that professor.
As the school shootings across the country have proven.
Exactly.
That's true.
And so it's naive for the school to assume that just because they're not allowed on campus right now, that they can't exist on campus.
Right. And ladies, do you have your final thoughts on kind of what?
I think that the one thing that it's the legislature stepping in and telling our administration what to do. I mean, what's next? Currently we're a dry campus. If you're over 21, even if you are over 21, you can't drink on campus. Is the legislature going to say, well, too bad, they're allowed, it's legal, you have to do that too? Is Washington and Colorado going to be, and since we have a student from Washington here, are Washington and Colorado public schools going to be required to have a pot smoking section on campus because recreational marijuana is allowed? I think it opens the door for introducing some mandates and for fixing a problem that isn't, for fixing something that's not broken.
And I just want, do you have any last thought?
Yeah, ultimately, again, I just really want to repeat that this is a practical issue, not a political issue. Even, one of the most conservative justices, Justice Scalia, he recognizes that schools should be gun-free zones. Interestingly enough, in the late 1990s, the NRA was a vocal proponent of gun-free zones. Similarly, the assault weapon ban vote, President Reagan supported that. And so, like I said, I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to eliminate Second Amendment rights. I'm just saying that right now I don't see there being a big problem on campuses, and I don't think that proponents of the bill have shown enough advantages through passing this legislation when looking at the costs.
Thank you for watching this episode of Hotspot. Please join us next time while we talk about the legalization of marijuana. If you have an opinion or you'd like to be on the show, please contact us at boisestateutp@boisestate.edu or follow us on Facebook and Twitter by searching Boise State UTP.